Good morning, Saints. It is Tuesday. I think it's the 26th or 25th of March. It's dreary outside. I love it when it rains, but I hear the birds chirping, so I don't believe it's going to rain anymore. Birds know when to come down. They're actually, if you know the atmosphere and how birds react to the atmosphere, they're really our greatest source of, I won't say astrology, weatherman. Yeah, they'll tell you a lot about the weather. Because birds don't too much. They don't like water. And when I say that, I think about Noah. And it depends on the type of bird also. But you will find that a lot of times when it's raining, there are no birds. They're hiding on the inside. Yeah, and so it's beautiful outside. Well, it's hazy outside, but when it's beautiful outside, the birds should be chirping and flying unless it's too hot. Okay? And I even hear a message in that. And I tell you, I can say so much and hear a message. Because they don't want to be in the heat either. So it has to be exactly right for the birds to come out. I remember a testimony God gave me one time when I was in Louisville, Kentucky, and I was blessed with some birds. And the Lord dealt with me on these birds. I had 2 birds, and they reminded me of me and Andre. The Lord used those birds to signify us, because we had a struggle in Louisville just being friends. The atmosphere was terrible, with us being friends, and so the birds was very symbolic. And I remember sitting looking at the birds one day, and the Lord showed me the birds. They were never really intimate, but they were close. And whenever you would go up to the cage, the male bird would peck. He wasn't anyone next to the female, and she sat there like she was royal on the little, what do you call that, stick that goes across the cage. And I remind me too of, that was my brother, of Andre. And so, but we were in a cage, and I never saw that we were in a cage. I never saw that. I just thought it was beautiful how close they were. And so as I began to look at the bird, I started to name the birds Renee and Andre. Not because of a love affair, but because there was a great protection in Louisville. But let me tell you what happened. Let me tell you the story. As the birds sat there, eventually I came downstairs one day, and I sat on the couch and I looked over at the birds. And we had like a huge cage. And the Lord said, what are birds used as? That's what the Lord said to me as I was sitting on the couch. And I looked over at the birds, and I didn't know. We always think, things that are beautiful, we take them and we lock them up and we make them our pets, right? And so the Lord told me, He said, I want you to go get the book. And I had to go went to the library, and I found a science book on birds. And I found that birds are needful for agriculture. They help. We want to know who plowed the ground before it even rained. How did the grass grow? Because the Bible says that back in Adam and Eve days, there were no rain. So we didn't have the rain, and we didn't have anyone to till the grounds. But what happened? Even before men got here, and even when there was just one man and one woman, what happened? Because there were land all over the world, but the men, or that Adam and Eve, or even Cain and Abel, or even their descendant, they didn't reach all over the world, but the grass was always taken care of. Yeah. It was always fertilized. It grew. What made the grass grow? And the Lord said, there was animals that fertilizes and bees. You see, the earth, the way God made it, it would take care of itself because of reproduction and production, just like the bee and the flower. Even before men get here, men was just supposed to take care of what God was already growing for him. He was already producing. Everything produces on its own. It really doesn't need a man. Doesn't need you to water it, doesn't need you to fertilize it. Everything grows on its own. And so the Lord asked me, what is the purpose of the bird? And I found that the bird fertilizes the soil. He flies around, he actually fertilizes it. And it went so deep, I don't have my book in front of me right now, but it went so deep in the job of a bird up on the earth. And so the Lord said, look at them birds. And I looked over at the birds, and they were beautiful. He said, but you have them caged. Are they doing anything? No. Now listen to me, because it's kind of deep. They were produced to do one thing, but I was keeping them from doing it. God has, thank you, Holy Spirit. God has a will even for the animals. He has a purpose for the animals. And so when we sit around for their beauty, we're actually handicapping them. We're enslaving them. That's what God showed me. They were enslaved. You know, they wasn't doing what he produced them to do. And so I looked at the birds and I got so convicted. Really. I got so convicted. I said, oh, Lord. I felt so bad because the birds, I mean, the main job that God created them to do, they couldn't really function. And our reproduction system is within ourselves, just like on our own bodies. When we can't release, something begins to occur or become damaged on the inside of us. And I know some of you may have had birds for years, you know, and they may grow effectively. And you may train them to be superstars. We call those kind of birds superstars. They used to call them, house niggers. Yeah, I remember when my bird got out, I had a parrot before these two. Here in San Antonio, I had 2 birds in Louisville, then I had one in San Antonio. It was so big, right? We used to breed Rottweilers, and so we switched, we exchanged some Rottweilers, 2 of them, for this big exotic bird. It was beautiful. And I remember I went, and I'm not going to jump my subject, I'm still teaching on the birds, but I went to get my nails done one day, and this lady had the same type of bird. But she had it out. It was able to get out the cage, and it walked around. And I said, oh, it's so beautiful. So I'm going to go home without knowing how and why the birds, you know. So I opened up my cage, and my bird, I had never seen it. It had such a love affair with me. And I didn't know that birds had that much affection. They really do. Once you talk to them, they bond with you. And so I opened up the cage, and he didn't come out at first. So I left it open like the lady did at the nail shop, and I had never done this before. And I walked around the house, and next thing you know, that bird, it looked like an eagle coming toward me flying. It was trying to get to me, but it didn't want to hurt me. It was just trying to get to me. It was so familiar with me, so used to me talking to it, that it flew across the room. And my living room was so huge at the time. All I saw was this big old eagle-like bird coming toward me in the house. I ducked and I ran in the bathroom. And it began to fly around the house, and the kids started crying at the dinner table. And so I said, oh, Lord, I was stuck in the bathroom, with the door closed, and I heard my kids crying. I said, oh, Lord, I can't leave my kids out there, but I was so scared, and they were screaming. And so I poked my head out, and I had to grab myself, regain my composure. I had to get things back into contact here. My kids are outside. I'm the protector. It caught me off guard, and that's even a teaching right there, because I tell you, normally a mother would lose her life for her children, but it hit me so when it first came toward me that it made me sink within myself, and I ran and I hid, and oh, Lord, I couldn't get out to my kids. And so I said, okay, my kids are here. So I tiptoed, and I had a baby that was in the high seat at the time, and I tiptoed out toward the kitchen, and the bird was sitting on the stairs. And so I hid behind the wall. And the kid stopped crying because the bird, he was like trying to go up the stairs. He was looking for me. And he sat like the top of the stairs, looked down at me. And he sat at the top of the stairs, and I'm just like peeking around the corner and see if he gonna see me. And I ran across him. And when he saw me run across, to get my children, I grabbed the kids and I ran out the back door, and he came after me. And the bird was outside. And the guy that was doing the yard at the time, we had a yard man. And he would always come by, and I used to pay him $10 to do the yard. And I ran outside, and there was one black guy and one Caucasian guy. And the black guy was just as scared as I was. I went running back in the house because the bird was chasing me. He wanted that intimacy. And I'm thinking the black man's going to help me. He running too, ducking. We both running and ducking from the bird. And so the Caucasian man, he just bent over, All he did was bend over, put his head down, and the bird came and sat on his shoulders. And he grabbed the bird. And the bird sat on his fingers, just as calm as ever. And he walked the bird in the house, and he put him back in the cage. I said, oh, Lord. And I said, why is it that her bird was trained? He said, no, her bird had just had his wings clipped. I said, what? Clip his wings? And can you imagine my mind? I would have probably cut the whole wing off. No, there's a part of a bird that makes him fly, that keeps him flying, right? And so you have to get that part of him clipped, because I got it done. And it's not the whole wings. I was thinking about that. I said, I know the bird had wings, at the nail shop. What do you mean, clip his wings, And so the bird rejected me from that day forward. He rejected me. The bird didn't even want me. Oh, that was a long story because almost 10 minutes. But my point of it is, the birds were in cage. I have to come back with this testimony because I have 15 seconds. I'm not even finished. But the bird in San Antonio, he rejected me. When I used to go up to the cage, he started pecking the cage. Once he put him back in there, he didn't have the same love affair with me. He began to peck the cage. And I was so hurt because it was like I heard his